Hello, this is Mr. Stevens. Thank you for joining this lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned how to solve equations using addition and subtraction. For today's lesson, we're going to be solving equations using multiplication and division. So our learning target, again, is I can solve equations using multiplication or division. And this is a video which unfortunately you can't see, but that's Shia LaBeouf telling you in a very strong, emphatic way you can do this. I will say that multiplication and division equations get messed up more often than addition and subtraction. So before we get started, let's review. What is an equation? Remember, an equation is, this is what we dealt with last time. Let me get my pencil all ready for you. An equation is something like x plus 3 equals 5 is two different expressions. So here's an expression, and the key thing is they need to be equal. So an equation is two equal expressions. Now what does it mean to solve an equation? That means to find values of the variable, in this case we're talking of x, that make the equation true. And what's the solution? It's the value of a variable that makes the equation true. So what we're trying to do is find the solution to this equation. What is x? And if you remember, we followed a simple process. We circled, I'm going to change colors, we circled the sign here, and we did the inverse operation. So we did the inverse means opposite. So instead of adding 3, we're going to subtract 3. And the other rule was what we do to one side, we do to the other. You'll hear me say that a lot throughout the lesson. And so when we subtract 3 minus 3, that made what we called a zero pair. Now, for today, we will not be doing that, but last time we made a zero pair. 5 minus 3 is 2, so our answer is x equals 2. Remember, we can check our work by using substitution. So we can substitute 2 for the variable x to see if it's a solution to the equation. And we would say 2 plus 3, does that equal 5? Well, 2 plus 3 is 5, so that is a solution to the equation. So again, that's just the rules we just went over. With 4, oh, I'm sorry. Don't forget to check your answers. Now, let's start with the lesson. So here we have a equation that says 3x equals 12. Now, even though there's no sign here, we know that this is, and remember we use a dot now, not an x, because that will be confusing next to another variable x. We know that that's multiplication. So just like addition and subtraction, we're going to do the inverse operation. So instead of multiplying, we're going to actually divide by 3. Now the difference between when we do multiplication and division equations and when we do add and subtract is we're not actually making a zero pair, because 3 divided by 3 isn't 0. 3 divided by 3 is actually 1, and we can always write an invisible 1 outside of a variable. It's just saying 1 times that number. It's never going to change. We don't do that, so what we do is cross it out. But let's just clarify. 3 divided by 3 is not 0, it's actually 1. We just don't write the 1. Now remember the other rule. We can do the inverse operation, that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, what we do to one side, we have to do the exact same thing to the other. So 12 divided by 3 is x equals 4. Now remember, check your work. So I'm going to substitute wherever I see x, I'll 3 times 4. Does that equal 12? Well, we know 3 times 4 equals 12. It is a solution to the equation. Remember, that's my answer. My solution is x equals 4. And remember, we write x equals 4. We don't just put 4, we put x equals 4. So we can state what 4 actually represents, and that's the variable x. Alright, so here is another equation. So what we're going to do is, we know that this is multiplication. So let's do the inverse. So the inverse or opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by 4. We're going to divide by 4. What we do to one side, we do to the other. So our answer is W equals 8 divided by 4, which is 2. Now let's check our work. 4 times 2 equals 8. And is that true? 4 times 2, it does equal 8. Okay, now I know you might be saying, wait a second, Mr. Stevens. You're overcomplicating this. All I had to say is 4 times what equals 8. It's like a question. And I know 4 times 2 equals 8. I don't need to do all this inverse operation stuff. And what I'll say to that is, yes, you are correct. You could solve the equation that way. The warning I will give you is next year in 7th grade, you're going to have equations that are called two-step equations that might look something like this. And this gets a little bit more complicated when it comes to this, especially because next year you'll be dealing with negative numbers. So I would warn you to not just say, oh, 4 times what equals 8? Oh, it's 2. But to actually get used to doing the inverse operation, and what you do to one side, do to the other, and then checking your work. It's just a good habit to get yourself into, because when 7th grade comes around, you're going to get problems with fractions, decimals, and it's going to be much harder and more difficult for you to try to do it that way. Okay, so let's check this next one. Again, what we want to do is say what operation is going on. Here's multiplication. Well, let's do the inverse. So we're going to divide by 7. What we do to one side, we do to the other. X equals 3. Let's check our work. 7 times 3, does that equal 21? And it does. So what is the solution to the equation? It's x equals 3. So hopefully you're seeing, okay, all right, this is pretty easy now that we've done addition, subtraction, and problem. I want you to pause the video and try this out using the inverse operation. Okay, so you've tried it out. Let's check your work. So here we have 3 times z equals 27. So we're going to do the inverse. We're going to divide by 3. What we do to one side, we do to the other. And so z equals, what's 27 divided by 3? It equals 9. Check your work. 3 times 9 equals 27. 27 equals 27. And again, this step here is vital. Okay, check your work. Notice it doesn't take me long to check my work. Maybe 10 seconds, but most likely 5 to 10 seconds. It's really not that long, but what it did was not only did it get me to solve the answer correctly, it created a habit. The more I do this, I think about it. And the more I think, I create that positive habit. And so I'm going to see things like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. Because a lot of times a student might make a mistake. They're in a hurry, just trying to get it done. And they therefore do not create that habit. Always check your work. Doesn't take much time, but there's no reason you should miss one of these parts because you can always check your work. Okay, so pause the video, try to do this one. Alright, for this one, you tried it out. Notice the variables on the right side. Remember, it doesn't matter if it's on the right or left. So we know this is 10 times a, and it equals 90. So we need to divide by 10, the inverse operation. 10 divided by 10 equals 1. And so we don't write that. And 90 divided by 10 equals 9. So a equals 9. Well, that's kind of look a lot alike. I should have done a better job here. Now check your work. 10 times 9 equals 90. Is that correct? And it is. Okay, pause the video and try this one out. Alright, so you've tried it out. Let's do the inverse operation. We're going to divide by 7. We're going to divide by 7. So b equals 8. Check your work. 7 times 8, does that equal 56? And the answer is yes, it does equal 56. So our solution is b equals 8. And again, I should have clarified this early on. Remember, equations only have one solution. Alright, so this equation here only has one solution in the whole universe. There's no other number that could make this equation true except 8. Not 8.00000001, not 7.99999. The only thing that makes it true is 8. Okay, so pause the video and give this one a try. Okay, so for this one, we're going to do the inverse. We're going to, instead of timesing by 13, divide by 13. 13 divided by 13 equals 1. What we do to one side, we do to the other. 52 divided by 13 is going to give me my solution, which is 4. I check my work. 13 times 4. I want it to equal 52. That's what I'm trying to get at. Let's see. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 52. So I have checked my work. This is the solution to the equation. Okay, now let's try what it looks like when there is division. Now we have y divided by 5. And remember, whenever you see this slant, it just means Google Slides doesn't let us do the division sign. It's very difficult sometimes. So whenever you see the slant, that means division. Y divided by 5 equals 4. So remember our rules, do the inverse. So instead of dividing, now we're actually going to times by 5. Now, I know this can be confusing, but just trust me, that's going to equal 1, just like the previous answer. And we know that we don't have to put 1 because whenever we have 1 next to a variable, the answer is always going to remain the same. So just trust me, when we cross this out, it does equal 1. So what we do to one side, because we times 5 over here, we got to times 5 on this side. And what is our answer going to be? Our solution, 4 times 5 is 20. Oh, I started right, 40. Sorry about that, 20. Now again, always check your work. 20 divided by 5 is that 4. And as you can see, it is 4. So our solution is y equals 20. So here we got z divided by 4 equals 12. So instead of dividing by 4, we'll times by 4. And again, this is going to equal 1, but we don't need to write that. We'll just leave it blank. What we do to one side, we do to the other. So we're timesing by 4. And our solution is z equals 48. Well, let's check it. 48 divided by 4 is that 12. And as you can see, the answer is yes, it is. Okay, I want you to pause the video. We've done a lot with multiplication. Let's see it with multiplication equations, so these division ones should be easier. Pause it and try this one out. Okay, so for this equation, we are going to do the inverse, so we're going to times by 3. What we do to one side, we do to the other. And 13 times 3 is going to be 39. So our answer is C equals 39. We can check our work by saying 39 divided by 3 equals 13. And I know 39 divided by 3 is 13. So I know that it's correct. C equals 39 is the only solution to the equation. Okay, now we have a decimal. I want you to pause the video and try this one out. Okay, our first decimal so far. So for this one, we need to do the inverse. So we're going to times by 9. Then we're going to come over here and times by 9. Hopefully you remember your rules. For when we multiply decimals, we count over. So at the end, I'm going to have to move it 1 to the left. So now I can just treat this like regular multiplication. 9 times 7 is 63. 5 carries, that's 6 tens. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus 6 is 33. I move my decimal back over. My answer is x equals 33.3. Okay, now the checking of your work gets a little bit more difficult on this one because I'm going to go 33.3 divided by 9. Remember your rules with dividing decimals. If it's in the denominator, all I do is move it up. Then I treat it like regular division. 9 goes into 33 3 times for 27. I subtract, give me 6 left over. I bring down my 3. 9 goes into 63 7 times. So we did check our work. The answer was 3.7. So 33.3 is the solution to the equation. And again, did this take that much longer? No, but what it also gave me was, it gave me practice with decimals. So it got me better at decimal work too. So this checking of your work, not only does it is it going to get you the right answer, it just creates positive habits, positive mindsets, and gives you extra practice. All those things are good. The only negative is it takes a little bit more time, but the end result is worth the time. Okay, we have 3 more problems. Pause this one and try it out. We got 2 decimals on this one. All right, this one might have taken you a little bit extra long to do. We're going to do the inverse. Instead of dividing, we're going to times by 6.2. That equals 1. What we do to one side, we do to the other. Remember your rules for decimal. Here we're moving it 1, 2. So at the end, I'm going to move it 2 decimals to the right. Then I just times normal. 2 times 8 is 16. Carry 1. 2 times 7 is 14. Plus 1 is 15. I bring down a place value for 0. 6 times 8 is 48. I'll carry a 4 over there. 6 times 7 is 42. Plus 4 is 46. I add them. And what I get is, after I move my decimal over, 48, J equals 48.36. Now to check my work, it's going to be a little bit trickier and going to take me some time. I go 48 and 36 hundredths divided by 6 and 2/10. Remember, I cannot have a decimal on my divisor, so I move it over once, but I have to also move, to the eraser, I have to move this decimal over and bring it up. And then I can get my eraser out and just pretend like there's no decimal. Then I just divide normally. 62 goes into 483. Ooh, that's tough. It's going to go in there, I think, 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry 1. 5 times 6 is 30. Plus 1 is 31. So I subtract. This one is, as you can see, the hardest one we've done so far. It is by far the hardest one we've done so far. And as you can see, I've made a mistake here. I need to go back, but I'm glad that I made this mistake. So you can see that number 173, that's too big. So I need to go back and say, well, I can do at least one more. In fact, I know I can do 2 more. So, well, that's a mistake. So I know that I can go in there 7 times instead of 5. I don't know what I was thinking of 5. 7 times 2 is 14. Carry 1. 7 times 6 is 42. Plus 1 is 43. I subtract. And I have 49 left over. I bring down the 6. And I say, how many times can it go in there? And I'm going to guess it goes in there 8, because that's what my answer is over here. Let's check. Back, what I'm going to do is just go 62 times 8. We want it to equal this 496. Let's check. 8 times 2 is 16. Carry 1. 8 times 6 is 48. Plus 1 is 49. It does equal it, so I checked my work. It did take me a little extra longer, but that is a solution to the equation. So hopefully today you got to reinforce what it means to, what an equation means, what it means to solve an equation by following the basic rules. Good luck on the exit ticket.